Good Wednesday evening, everybody. Well, it's part 3 of our Facebook budget brushless Baja build. So stick with me until after the intro and we'll get to it.
Let's get started.
So any second, we should have the brushless conversion for our budget build. Boom! There it is. So let's crack it open and see what we got. This was a Baja brushless conversion. I bought it off eBay. It was $85 with free shipping plus tax. It made it like almost $93. And we're going to open it up and I'm going to take the parts out and we're going to look at the parts. And then we're going to install them on our buggy. And you're going to watch me do that. I'm going to talk to you through it. Here's the card of the people I bought the conversion from. And let's cut this open and get these parts out. I showed the card just for a second, but we're going to take a quick look at it better before I get these parts out. TIT Racing. I'm not sure if, I guess that's TIT Racing. So now we're getting ready to pull the parts out of the bag. Each part is individually bagged. There was a pinion included, which I forgot about. A bag of screws, bearings, and spacers. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces in the conversion. This is the bag of screws. There's a new bearing in there. And then spacers. This is the battery hold bar at the back of the chassis. This is one of the side braces. This is one of the side pieces. Or no, that's another side brace. I'm sorry. This is a top plate. That's one of the side pieces, the passenger side piece. That is the base that bolts to the chassis plate. And then there's the driver's side piece. I'm probably not going to use the spur gear guard. I haven't used them in the past. So I'm about to crank this stuff open, get it all laid out, and then we're going to look at the pieces laid out and get the buggy ready to put the pieces on it. I'm going to speed up, taking the rest of these parts out and looking at them real quick, and I'll be back. I'm going to try to set these up here where you can see kind of how it's going to go on the buggy. And of course we'll go over each piece as we put them on the buggy. So when we get done with this, we'll move on to the buggy. This is the spur guard. I don't normally use that, so I'm going to leave it in the package for up a second. I might open it in a minute. This is a 14-tooth pinion that's included with the conversion. I won't be using that. That's major torque. So Well, let's take a look at all the pieces laid out like they basically go on the buggy up close. These are your pieces to the brushless conversion. Top plate, both sides, base, battery bar, and 2 side braces. Now we're going to look at the buggy and get it ready to put the brushless conversion on it. So here's our Baja with the Team Chase cage. And here is it without the Team Chase cage. So let's get started with our brushless conversion. We're going to get the parts over here, and we're going to get the screws we need for the bottom plate, which everything bolts to. So now I'm just laying everything out, looking at it where it's going to go. I'm going to end up moving all this stuff to the table behind me so I have room to work. But I'm going to start with the bottom plate that bolts to the chassis plate with 2 countersunk screws and 2 button head screws. Here's the bottom plate. And the wide side actually goes to the driver's side, opposite of the spur gear. And you'll get 2 countersunk screws with washers, and you'll get a button head screw to go in the middle, and then on the spur gear side you have 3 button head screws. So I'm just going to thread these 4 screws in, then I'm going to turn the buggy over and tighten them up with an Allen wrench. I'm really missing my Allen drivers. I still haven't got a replacement for the one that I messed up the other video, and I'm paying the price right now. So I'm going to fumble around with this Allen wrench and get the bottom in, and then the 2 sides, then the top plate, and then the 2 side pieces and the battery bar. Now, just like any quality machined pieces from China, there are no directions. So you just kind of gotta get the screws that fit, and actually this time I had quite a few screws left over. I guess maybe because I've done this conversion so many times, I don't use everything. Which I'll look at the screws that we have left over. I'll have a screw count of what I actually used for the conversion, and we'll look at all that after I get the conversion installed. Make sure these bolts are tight, and then we can move on to the side pieces. I'm going to remove the spur gear. I had the spur gear and the bearing and the spacer on there, so I wouldn't lose them. I kind of forgot that the conversion comes with a spacer and a bearing. So I actually put that side on with the new bearing in it, and then realized that the old bearing and the old spacers on the lace shaft. So then I have to take that side off real fast, which ain't really a big deal. Get the bearing and the spacer off the lace shaft, and then put it back on. Right now I'm taking the spur gear off so I can put that side piece on with the bearing in it. I'm getting the new bearing now, and I'll be right over in just a second to put it on the buggy. We use 3 button head bolts on the spur gear side and 2 countersunk bolts with washers on them and a button head in the middle on the opposite of the spur gear side. After I get the conversion all put on, we'll look at all sides of it. We'll look at how the bolts are, how the brackets are. We'll talk about one bracket in particular, side brace, and just make sure there's a good understanding of how everything goes. So I started with the piece that's actually on the driver's side of the buggy, opposite of the spur gear, and then I'll put the piece that's on the spur gear side that has the bearing in it that the lay shaft goes through on, then the top plate, then the 2 side braces, and then we'll look at the buggy and talk about what we're going to do next. And again, I can't convey how much quicker and easier Allen drivers are with a good gnarled handle. I need to order me a set of MIPs, but I haven't. And like I said, I'm paying the price now because I'm fumbling with these Allen wrenches and it's not a whole lot of fun. Which, for this conversion, you only need 2 sizes. I believe it's a 3mm and maybe possibly a 4 or maybe 5mm. There's one screw that is pretty big, and the screw's not necessarily big, although it is bigger than the others, but it's quite a bit larger Allen for it. So back to the video, I have put the bearing in the spur gear side plate, and I have slid it on the lay shaft. I have lined the screws up. I'm putting the 3 button head bolts in right now. I'll tighten them up, and then I'll move on to the top plate. Here in just a second, I realize that bearing and that orange washer's laying on the lay shaft. You can see it from right here. I realize it, and then I just start taking that side plate off to get it off, and then put it back on and continue. That deep breath was me realizing that bearing and that washer's on the lay shaft. And of course, I start taking it apart to get it off and then continue. And for $85 plus tax, which is almost $93, this is a very nice conversion. I may be trying to have a conversion made out of carbon fiber. I'm not real sure if I'm going to pursue that. But for $93, this is a really nice conversion. It's really not more than you need. It's really just what you need. And it works really good. I've had it. Well, I have 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th buggy I've installed it on right now that I have, and probably total, this is the 10th buggy I've put one on. So I'm getting this spur gear side plate tightened up, and I'm moving it so everybody can see it. And next is the top plate, and I'm going to get all the screws together. There are 4 countersunk screws, One's very long. It's the two longest countersunk screws in the package, and 6 small little screws. So 4 countersunk screws, 2 being the standard length in the kit, 1 being the longest, 1 being the next longest, and then 6 tiny little screws to hold the top plate down. There's the top plate and the little aluminum spacer that goes on the spur gear side to take up the room. And I had screws in it and it wouldn't slide back, so I had to take those back 2 screws out. And I just went ahead and took all 4 of the screws out, and it slides back just like it's supposed to, and it sits just like it's supposed to. You know, anytime you're dealing with plastic parts or aluminum parts, you might not want to tighten everything down completely until you've got all the screws in, or you're going to have to, flex something to get the hole to line up. And you'll see here in just a minute where I'm putting the screws in the top plate, and I've actually got to pull back on the shock tower to get the screw holes to line up, which isn't really a big deal. I'm just letting you know that's something you may have to do. And that's really about it as far as anything special, which is really nothing at all. So right now I'm putting that long countersunk screw in, and I don't have my my Allen driver, so it's taking forever. And now I'm about to try to put the screw in the opposite side, which isn't an issue. The only time I really run into an issue is when I'm putting the tiny little screws in the top plate and holds it to each side piece. Like I said previously, I had to crank on the shock tower a little bit to get the holes to line up, but I got them all in and they're tight and everything's good. While I tighten this countersunk screw down, if you haven't had a chance to like and subscribe or share with your friends or on Facebook or anywhere really with people that like 5Bs and remote control stuff, do that for me. I really appreciate it. It helps the channel a lot. It's completely free, and it takes maybe not even 2 seconds. So I really appreciate you if you are subscribed and watching. I know there are some that comment on all videos, and I really appreciate y'all. And it keeps me going, the videos make me want to work on it, and working on it makes me want to make a video, and it's working out pretty good right now. So we're going to keep on with the budget Baja build from Facebook. We're going to, after we get done with this brushless conversion, we're going to talk about a motor and an ESC, and all while still trying to keep it budget. We're going to get a motor and an ESC, and we're going to get a radio, and then we're going to get some batteries, and then we'll be driving this thing. The only thing I really run into was the 3 screws on the driver's side opposite of the spur gear. in the top plate. Those holes were about a half a hole off, so I pulled back on the shock tower and they lined up, and I popped the screws in. I'm putting the small screws in the top plate now. Get those 6 in, and then I'm making sure everything's tight. Get those 6 small screws in, since I have an Allen driver for the little ones, and move on to the side braces. I've been as high as 12S with this brushless conversion from eBay. I've been over 100 miles an hour with it. I've bashed as hard as anybody. I've wrecked. I've done some crazy stuff with a Baja with this brushless conversion. So it's definitely a good one. Now on these plastic pieces that go on the top of the chassis, you got bolts that go sideways through them. You got bolts that come up through the bottom. I used to socket head Allens and bolted them from the bottom on each one. And then the side piece is countersunk, so I used to countersunk head screws and bolted through the sides, and that holds very nicely. This is the piece that has the large screw that goes in backwards. You put it in from the inside of the buggy towards the outside, and it kind of sandwiches the side brace in between the conversion and the plastic piece. and then it comes up and it bolts to the plastic piece in the front. I've turned the buggy so I can put the bolts in the side pieces, with the side braces, and you can see it now. I'm zoomed in on it, so this gives you a good look at the conversion on the buggy. These are the plastic chassis pieces that the side braces bolt to. Socket head Allens up through the bottom of the chassis into them. They have captured nuts in them, and bolt them down. Then bolt the braces to that, and you're golden. So once I get this side brace on the inside, which I know it goes on the inside, but this plastic piece was acting weird, so I decided to put it on the outside. Well, it was very apparent right away that it did not go on the outside. It goes on the inside. And like I said, when I get done tightening up these side braces and making sure everything's tight, we're going to really get a good look at the conversion on the buggy. I'm not real sure why, but I had to rob two countersunk screws from a bolt bin to get all the countersunk screws in the right place. I didn't use some short countersunk screws. I don't really like the really short screws because if they vibrate loose, they're gone immediately. At least I'd like to give it a little time to vibrate before it's gone. So when I get done here in just a minute, I'm tightening up the last side brace, and then once I get everything tight, we'll look at the screws that are left over and all that. I believe this is the last screw. I just had to kind of, it's going into plastic, but then there's a captured nut there, so I had to make sure it got in and got into the nut good, and then I could just tighten it up. And that's about it for the install. So like I said, when we get done, we're going to look at it all real close and see how everything is. Just kind of giving everything a one over, make sure I didn't leave nothing out or forget anything, which this is a pretty simple conversion, so there's not really a whole lot of room for forgetting something, because like it's only what you need, so if you forget something, you're going to be missing something. I'm putting the spur gear on and then going to clip it. I've got to put the spacer on behind. That's the spacer right there that goes behind the spur gear. That spacer is very important. If you don't have that spacer on, it's going to split your spur gear over and over and over again, and you're just not going to have a good time. So you got to make sure that spacer's in between the spur gear and the conversion bearing. Here you just get a pair of needle nose and you get the clip on it and just clamp the clip down onto the shaft and pop it on. There you go. I'm kind of noticing there might be an issue with this rear shock. It's very, very stiff. I'm not sure if the shaft's bent. I'm going to take it off and look at it and see. I'm not going to do it on the video, but I'm going to check it out and make sure it's not something that's tore up. All right, so the brushless conversion's all installed. The spur gear's on, everything's on and tight and ready for a motor and an ESC. Let's look at it. Here's the conversion, all bolted on and tight. Very clean, very nice. Everything really works extremely well. This conversion comes in quite a few different ways. Like you can get steering, you can get a battery box, you can get just the conversion. I just get the conversion. So let's look at the screws we had left over real quick. So here are the screws and the spacers that we had left over. I'm not real sure why those spacers are there, because you only have to have one. The socket head bolts, I'm not real sure about. The very small countersunk screws, there was 3 that holds the spur gear guard on, and then the 2 small socket head screws hold a cover on. And I think maybe the rest are just extras in case, 2 small screws for the top plate in case you lose some or need some. That's all I can really figure because there's not a place to use them. Another quick look at the conversion. All right, so there's the brushless converted Baja. Let's take one more look at it. And there it is. Done deal. So now I have to find a motor and an ESC. This is a budget build. So I'm going to do, probably I'm going to find a Max 5 Gen 1 with a 800 kV Hobby Wing motor. I think I can get a combo like that for about $200, maybe a little cheaper. And then we'll have 8S, and 8S will ride wheelies across the yard. 8S is fun. Like, 8S is the minimum I'd want, but really more than 8S is kind of overkill on these. So a Hobby Wing Gen 1 Max 5 with an 800 kV motor is going to do exactly what we want to do on this budget Baja build. And like I said, I think I can get one for $200, maybe a little bit cheaper. We're at $344 on the Baja right now. So if you hadn't had a chance to like and share and subscribe, please do. And thanks for watching. This is part 3. Stay tuned for part 4, where we'll have the motor in the ESC and we'll put it on and get everything working. Have to get a radio. I guess part 4 will be electronics. And thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.